All right, welcome back. This is another Trench Crusade, and in this one, I am responding to Glass Bear, who made another response, except this response, unlike the first one, is a lot less knee jerk, and you can tell that Glass Bear is actually thinking about things, though he still kind of overlooks a lot of stuff. And my advice to Glass Bear is okay, look, let's say you really love Trench Crusade, you love it, that puts you and I kind of in the same boat. We like the, I mean, I love the idea of it. I've even went so far as to, for no good reason, print out, some World War I. Like this is a German Lichten camp, something other, whatever. I've got currently going at least four armies, at least four. And I think one of my favorites, other than the Trench Pilgrims, which I mean, I love my Trench Pilgrims, they're just super cool, right? But these guys right here, these Trench Ghosts, which you can see where I cut the submachine gun off of this guy and used some green stuff and stuff to give him I think that's a Mauser. And I changed all the heads to uh, you know, doughboy hats instead of Stallhelms. Whereas this guy right here, that's definitely, yeah, that's an infield. And he's got a stick grenade in his hand. So I've been doing tons of mods because I love modding miniatures. And also because you really can't start the game with a ton of guys with submachine guns. And since there's only two um, ghost guys that I've seen, that meant that I had to trade some stuff up. Plus, I've downloaded some backpacks from World War I, and I'll be throwing some backpacks on some of these guys. This guy, I gave a Lewis gun that I had laying around from some, I think, British soldiers. And it was funny how well it fit in, really, you know? Like I might need to trim it up a little bit to smooth things out just a little bit when I do the painting. And when I decide to put a backpack on, I'll probably pop this off. I mean, and just smooth it out a little bit and give him a backpack. It makes more sense, right? But one of the reasons I've been printing up these World War I tanks is because the now this has nothing to do with Glass Bear. This is me talking. If you filled the trench ghosts, their warlock or whatever he is, their leader can actually be, they call it in a palanquin, but it's also a tank. And you mount it on a 50 mil base, which this would definitely fit on a 50 mil base, which means I could grab any type of tank, World War I tank, modded up tank, fantastical, whatever you want kind of tank, and start like, making it into a ghost tank. And that could be the leader of the trench ghost unit, you know. I've also got a few trench ghost assassins or whatever they're called, the guys with the big freaking rat, you know. Having a 3D printer is pretty badass because I can just print out whatever I want, the parts I want. And there are so many great creators who are making items that can be used for Trench Crusade that you need never actually buy Trench Crusade miniatures if you don't want to, because if you want to show them your ire and say, hey, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that you guys are taking liberties with stuff that you should definitely not be. um I just won't buy your stuff. And it's the American way. If somebody pisses you off with their product, you ignore the thing that you find offensive or whatever word you want to use, and then you just don't give them money. It's really that simple. But now let's look at Glass Bear, not Bear. Bear's a good guy from Canada who probably has zero opinions on miniature gaming because he doesn't. See, he says it's never specified about the colonization of the New World. Never specified. That's true, but never specified, my friend, does not mean we can't, in our mind, think about it. And that's a thing. I'm going to think about it. And I don't need a couple of knuckleheads who are obviously not thinking about it to try to tell me anything, right? I'm a grown man. I've played games longer than probably some of those guys have been alive or as long. And, whatever, right? Might have tried. Well, if they tried, they probably would have succeeded. They only failed in reality because of famine, but that wouldn't, I don't think, have been a huge issue if they had, aircraft and stuff like that to help. And everybody was armed with, relatively more modern equipment than in reality. Because remember, in this reality, weapons technology just blew up, like it's World War One, and you've got people running around with like all kinds of crazy stuff. So uh, don't see how America could exist even remotely close to how we know it now. I agree with this. It wouldn't, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't have been a British colony. And in 1914, it may still be part of the Commonwealth because maybe there was no revolution. Maybe the colonists in America are so devoted to providing goods, services, equipment, men, whatever, to help Britannia's war effort that they never there's no like whatever, right? That's a thing. So no, I didn't say America. Well, I did kind of say it, but America as we know it, like right now, from sea to shining sea, may not exist. We may have been stopped at the Mississippi by demonic forces that control the Aztec Empire. Or, maybe a civil war broke out in 1889 and there's actually two Americas. That's a thought. And maybe one of those two Americas, maybe the Southerners, because they were slave owners, even though that's kind of, I'm a Southerner, but maybe they were corrupted. And now you've got the Union and allies fighting against corrupt Southern. They say they're Christian, but they're really not. And there's a whole thing going on in North America, and maybe some native tribes accepted Christianity. Many did without being forced. And they're fighting, alongside the forces of Christ. But other tribes, especially in the Southwest, like the Aztecs and various others like that, who worship demonic gods that demanded sacrifice and, cannibalism and stuff, they would be a major power in the New World, right? So yeah, I mean, it could go a lot of ways, but America not being colonized by one of the other world powers, that's not possible. Even if there was a big war going on, like I pointed out, in the real world during World War One, we were still doing science to try to discover, things about the Antarctic, the Arctic. I mean, there were a lot of stuff going on, and in World War Two, our World War II, the Germans were sending scientists and units out all over the entire world, exploring and whatever. So yeah, just because a war happens doesn't mean that everything in a country just grinds to a halt, because that's not how it works. It didn't work that way in America during actual World War One. We still kept doing things, and so did the British. So yeah. So here's the only thing you need for a colony in the New World. You need enough human beings from Europe, enough people to set up stable, or you're talking about stability, to set up colonies that can't be wiped out by enemy native tribes. As soon as you got that, it's over, because those colonies will receive new equipment, arms, and whatever. Remember, they're fighting against Paleolithic or Neolithic peoples with stone tools and wood tools, and not even the wheel. So if you were to start colonizing the United States, and then at some point around 1800, you start dropping off boxes of, bolt action rifles and shit like that, the natives would be completely screwed, right? Those that didn't just join with the colony, which, did happen up north in like Quebec and stuff like that. I think that's one of the reasons so many Quebecois women are so beautiful, is because, of the mixed blood, something about European and Indian mixing really does lead to some incredibly gorgeous women, or, men, I guess. I always thought Gordon Lightfoot was a relatively handsome man, and he's a Chippewa and, I don't know, some European. Okay. See, the battle against hell evolves. Yeah, I agree. But the thing to remember is, in 1099, the battle against hell wasn't world spanning yet. It was on its way, but for however long, not super specified, kinda. It was more of a local conflict, really. So it wouldn't have stopped anything. And also remember, as Christianity got more like hardcore in Europe, in real life, it was the reverse. As Christianity got less hardcore, the more hardcore guys fled to the New World, right? Well, it could be different. It could be like maybe some Orthodox Christians in Eastern Europe are looking at what's going on with the supposedly new church and all this kind of bullshit with the Metacrists, and they're like, no, F this. And they're hopping on boats and they are heading to Greenland or somewhere. So no, right? Colonization could still and would still occur. Absolutely. From Europe, for sure, but from other places. See, that's the issue. We're forgetting those other places. Yeah, I agree with the Civil War thing, Bear, or Glass Bear, 100%. There could have been a civil war within the church. There was, and some of those people could have sent people across the ocean to get away. The Black Grail is unleashed. Yes, well, you could then argue that the plague that wiped out the vast majority of people in the New World was part of the Black Grail. I mean, add that into the game, and now all of a sudden you've got the Black Grail faction, but in the New World, versus, an American saint like Saint Herman or Seraphim Rose, or, I mean, there's a lot of saints from back in the day that were in America. In the Orthodox Church anyway. Yeah, they're required to give funding, but not all their funding. I'll answer that. They will still have their own funding. And the other thing you should remember, though, is the colonization of the New World was really a private affair. A bunch of people got together with some money and paid some people to take them across the ocean. And then later, because they were citizens of the British Empire, they declared it a British colony. But there's no reason it had to be that way. A bunch of Quakers could have went over and paid their own way. A lot of times, colonization of new worlds, new lands, etc., is a private affair. It has nothing to do with governments. I like the plague, and no, the Black Grail is not necessarily a supernatural plague, but beyond, it's just their version of the bubonic plague with some supernatural effects. I mean, you know, Antioch gets blown up by a nuke or something, and yet the forces of Antioch hold the line. They hold the line. Hebrew Knights, see, a Hebrew Knight would be destroyed on sight immediately by any Christian force, because this would be before modern popes changed things about the guilt of for the death of Christ, etc. They would 100% be considered heretical. And on top of that, remember, and I say this as somebody who was raised Jewish, Jewish people, for the most part, reject Christ. They reject Jesus, right? And in rejecting Jesus, that makes them a member of the other side. There's only two sides in this war, and that's what I keep trying to. This is what I think the actual creators are missing too. They're trying to make it more than two sides. But in the war between the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, etc., and the forces of hell, there's really only two sides. You are either on the side of heaven, which means you are a Christian who believes in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or you're on the side of hell. Whether you know it or not, you are. That's it. It's not, there's no like subtlety there. And, we're talking good as defined in the Christian Bible versus evil, also as defined in the Christian Bible. But in this case, the creators went deep into Jewish folklore, with the Goetica and things like that. They went really deep into some Jewish folklore. I mean, they mention Lilith as a demon. That is hardcore Jewish folklore, right? It's not appearing in like the Tanakh, the Torah, really, or any of the Gospels. So, yeah, they definitely reached into Jewish folklore pretty big time. I don't know if they've read the Talmud or anything, but no. Any Jewish people surviving this apocalypse, if they do not accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, would absolutely be on the forces of hell side and treated as such by Christians. There's just no way around it. And the same would be for Muslims too. Whether they say they worship the same God as us, there's a lot of evidence supporting the fact that they don't. That the Kaaba was actually originally a temple to Baal, and that all the other stuff that they say is just whatever. So you know what I mean? That means in a Christian mindset, if you're talking about hardcore Christians, the kind of people who would pick up a rifle and just march halfway around the world to try to stab a demon in the head, a Muslim is just basically no different in their mind than an actual heretic trooper. They're the same thing. It's like same thing, different demon. So that's the other issue. And this is the issue. I like the idea of what they're trying to do, but they need to realize that when you're talking about the religious interactions, whether you believe them or not personally, doesn't change the fact that this is how these religions interact. So, yeah, you know. Yep, Antioch gets wiped out. They are alive and a part of the conflict. I didn't see that part. Where do they stay? Are they're in that Knights Templar compound? And what about the legend that some Knights Templar fled Europe and settled in the United States in the 10th or 11th century? What if that happened? And there's like the United States has been, the New World has been settled by Knights Templars who have been fleeing from Europe. See, the navals form this part. The heretics form naval superiority. How? How do they do this? Because you're saying that the heretics who can't get along worth anything, which kind of would be a blasphemy, since in the Bible it says that the forces of hell would never divide their house. How could they possibly build more ships than every country around the Mediterranean combined, right? And then every time they got within a mile of Malta or any of the islands in the Mediterranean, they would have members from the forces of good, like, the Order of Malta or something, with shore-based batteries trying to put an end to them. And that's not including the fact that Africa, North Africa, so Morocco, Libya, Egypt, etc., any of the places that haven't been overrun by Mammon in Africa, and every island and every part of Europe near the Mediterranean that's controlled by good guys would have land-based airstrips where they would be constantly launching airplanes. Think of something like what was it called? The sea. Anyway, biplanes with torpedoes mounted under them, right? So every time a heretic ship tried to leave their ports in Jerusalem, they would be running a gauntlet just to escape the Mediterranean. Now, this is the historian / war gamer in me coming out and saying, yeah, that's you would have massive fleets quartered around Gibraltar, around Tripoli. Every time a heretic fleet tried to make that gauntlet, it would just be literally a bloodbath, because they would be constantly attacked by land-based forces, bombers, torpedoes, such, and also shore batteries, which can be much larger than anything you could ever mount on a ship. So yeah, that's just not a thing. England, largest factor in American colonization. Yeah. And well, I mean, I think the Quebecois would disagree with that, but yeah. But the thing is, you're assuming, like what they said, that the heretic fleets would automatically take control of the ocean. And that's absolutely not possible. They just said that because it helps them lead on to the rest of their thing. It's not a logical preposition, and also remember, Antioch would have people spying. So as soon as they start building massive any ships, the message would be going all over Europe. They're building fleets. What do? Well, obviously we fortify every freaking island, every choke point. We build airstrips everywhere, and we're constantly flying scouts out looking for them. And if we find them, then we just start launching dive bombers, torpedo bombers, etc., and shore batteries. These are things that would be going on. Not only would be going on, but did go on during the 10th century, 11th century, 12th century. I mean, the whole time that the Islamic conquest was going on. I mean, look up the siege of Malta. You know what I mean? Or the siege of Sicily, the siege of Crete, the siege of, yeah, things did not go that way in real life. Now add extra technology like a space program and aircraft. And yeah, no, no, no. The idea that the heretic fleets could have dominated the world from Jerusalem is unbelievable, even in a fantasy world where we're trying to believe all this other stuff. And the response is only so bad in Europe because it's next to ground zero. Right, right. But only really southern Europe around the Mediterranean. Uh, Places like northern Europe, like, I mean, they talk about snow devils in Finland. Well, where in the hell did they come from? You know what I mean? Did somebody summon them? Or was that they're being smartass and taking Ukraine's side in the Russo-Ukraine war and trying to imply that the Russians are the snow demons, which would be incredibly racist for them to do, and also very insulting to over, close to 200 million people on the planet to be compared to demons, even though they're Orthodox Christians. Um, but no, Europeans could absolutely still be colonizing the New World, even though hell has busted loose in Georgia and the devil holds the card. No, in Jerusalem. Inca would not be an issue. They would probably get their butts whipped when they entered, Central and North America and ran into the Aztec. Well, unless the Aztec Empire. When did the Aztec Empire come into existence exactly? Not that the Inca were any better. I mean, they were cannibals and doing all kinds of sacrifices and stuff too. So, um, if the Inca decided to conquer all of South America and start moving into North America, that would be a horrible thing for the world because, by any classification guide, a culture that directly reveres demonic entities and takes place in human and child sacrifice and cannibalism, etc., is 100% going to be part of the forces of hell. So, this again is why, just from a storytelling point of view, you would want there to be someone in the New World fighting against them. So that makes the conflict bigger. It's not just Antioch. There could be somewhere on the Mississippi, there could be like this whole trench system, where the forces of the Christian colonists are trying to hold back this massive, empire devoted to whichever demons. Um, and that would be an interesting thing as well. Uh, Also, China. Where does China fit into this? I mean, a lot of Chinese people during the later era converted to Orthodox Christianity. That's actually part of what caused the Boxer Rebellion. Is they wanted to wipe out a lot of the European Christians and the Chinese that had converted to European Christian churches. And that's why, the Orthodox Church has so many Chinese martyrs. So what about China? Did China accept Christianity? Did um, Japan accept Christianity? Are they currently working in the Pacific? And if they um, are they engaged with the forces of hell in South America? That's a question to ask yourself. I mean, and these are, like I said, really what they need to do is they need to take a map of the world and war game it year to year based on the populations of regions, the religious beliefs of the regions, the possibility of conversions, etc., and then also resources, and things like that. It's like See, I'm willing to give the heretic fleets kind of a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because a lot of the resources could be uh, being sent through the gate from hell, like, entirely. And so they could be building these big these still, monitors and stuff while the Europeans are trying to catch up to that. But still, it doesn't change the fact that in order for them to be anything anywhere in the world scene, they still have to break out through the gates of Gibraltar. And I just don't see that being really possible without horrendous losses. Especially if Gibraltar, both sides, were, just loaded full of airstrips and coastal batteries and troops, etc. Even if you talk about the heretics that jump off the ship in the ocean and use their armor to, scuba up to the beach. Well, when they scuba up to that beach line and they see that freaking coastal wall loaded full of machine guns and stuff, yeah, they're done. I mean, what are they going to try to pull Omaha Part 2? That's not really sounding like it would be a thing that would be a good idea. But see, that's just me. That's just my logical thoughts on the matter, and why I think that the game needs to be expanded much more than it currently is, and also why maybe these bad boys need to be added in. You know what I mean? I mean, they already kind of are. Like I said, read the Ghost Legions, Trench Ghosts. They mention tanks. So maybe the forces of New Antioch have tanks. We know they do, flame tanks, right? But other militaries, like what if the Free State of Prussia or the Holy Roman Empire have been working on these tractors, or hell, you might even be able to get stuff interwar, like, the Czech designed PZ-38, if we're going to, up the technology. Because, like I said, according to the rules in 18 something, the church had a space program and is thinking about building bases on the moon and stuff like this. So, I mean, obviously the technology is really, really out there, right? So, we have mobile armored bodysuits and stuff. So maybe that's a thing. Maybe they're like, why build a tank when you can just build a guy in a big ass armored bodysuit with a big gun, But then again, the tank would be cheaper. I don't know. That I don't know. But Glass Bear, I like your new attitude. It's a lot more introspective. And so I am showing you respect back instead of, getting all like frustrated or whatever and being like, looking at you like, you grew a tail out of your forehead. I'm answering your questions, but I'm also challenging you to think about these things, right? Like, just because these guys said something, it doesn't mean it would be so. This is the thing. These are just some guys. They haven't even created anything new. They just said that a gate to hell opened up. I mean, there's nothing new about that. The timing is not new. Nothing they've done is new, except maybe the Metacrists, which are, again, somewhat blasphemous. Because if you were to get the flesh of Christ and you were to somehow clone it, it wouldn't be Christ. It would just be human flesh, right? Because the Christ part is in heaven with the Father and the Holy Spirit. So, I mean, anyway, that's my understanding of it. Conversation actually went from very antagonistic to very good, actually. You made me think about some stuff. I mean, yeah, why the Chinese had trading posts all up and down the Pacific coast, and so what about that? You know what I mean? But the idea that the New World's just not being colonized by anybody or anything, that's completely unbelievable. And again, I know a lot of people don't like to, because I don't know why, but a lot of people get really like antsy when you start pointing out that certain indigenous or whatever cultures, non-European, let's say non-European, not indigenous, because they weren't indigenous to the New World. They migrated there. But certain non-European cultures, if you start depicting them as possibly being bad guys, people get very offended. Some people do. But when you talk about the South American cultures, there's simply no way to deny the fact that they were, for the most part, cannibals. They were big time into human sacrifice and stuff like that. They were like horrible about enslaving their neighbors, and they worshipped deities that, at best, could be compared to demons. I mean, look up some of the gods they worship. They were absolutely terrible. Titscat, what's Twitzcatl, the smoking mirror, and the goddess of the flint knife, and Tlaloc, and Hetzcatl, the guy that his warriors would flay their enemies and then wear their enemy skins like a cloak. I mean, this was some really outrageous stuff they were doing, and they wrote it down. We didn't make up lies about them. They literally wrote down the stuff they did. And because other than the fact that they were doing all that crazy shit, they were very advanced, very powerful warriors, and very, very powerful, good engineers. So, I mean, they could have easily, with a little help from the forces of hell, became a technological power, you know, equal to Antioch, which only, again, can logically mean one of two things. One, they conquered the entire New World, and now everyone's host, because there's literally hundreds of millions of people across the ocean just waiting for those, or building fleets to invade Europe. Or two, there are European nations that had grown up from colonies in the New World that are constantly fighting to hold that bunch back. So the war is not just Antioch. The war is literally spread out. And then let's assume China converts to Christianity. They very nearly did already historically. And the Chinese become another faction of Christians who are willing to be duking it out for the forces of heaven. But to end this thing, I know it's went on a ways. The whole deal is just basically heaven versus hell. This is a binary thing. Any group you look at, you have to ask yourself, are they Christian and therefore fighting for heaven? Or are they not and therefore hell, whether knowingly or not? Because you can absolutely unknowingly be a minion of hell. A popular example would be atheists. The fact that atheists don't believe in hell does not mean they won't go there. That's like me saying I don't believe in New Zealand, but then my wife buying me, a ticket to New Zealand. I mean, so yeah. Anyway, peace and love. God bless. And hopefully we can both enjoy this game. It's just that the creators need to be a little bit more mindful of how they write the lore, because they are dealing with very sensitive subjects, right? Very sensitive subjects. Like I do not suggest that they openly attack Islam because I would be afraid that some Islamic fundamentalists would want to murder them all for it. Now, there's generally no chance that like Christians would want to murder them for being blasphemous, but yeah, uh, you know, other religions are not quite so enlightened, so they're really walking a fine line here. They really are. If they depict the Muslims negatively at all, and word gets out into the general Muslim community that they're, insulting the prophet or whatever, yeah, these guys could have to go into hiding. Look what happened to Salman Rushdie. So that's one part of their whole thing I don't envy. Anyway, again, for the second and third time, peace and love. God be with you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you made it to the end of the video, um, I guess I'm going to show you. I need to put the dull coat on my Jokobo. Why? Because I needed something that was not a horse, but could still count as a mount for my Talislanta role playing game. So I found some STLs of these birds with saddles, and I'm going to paint them all up different colors and everything, and it'll be cool. And I've even got some like little reptilian dragon type things that are going to be mounts, because the thing with Talislanta is there are no horses. So yeah, and for the third time in three, catch you later.